All right, everyone, it is 2 o'clock. I believe our recording is started, so we are going to go ahead and jump right in. I want to welcome everyone to our 16th annual Growing Online Learning Conference presented by Illinois Community Colleges Online. The theme for 2024 is AI Transforming Education for Tomorrow. We hope that this conference offers you ideas and strategies for engaging students with effective use of artificial intelligence. I'm Lisa Miller from South Suburban College. Thank you for being here today. ILCO would like to thank Heartland Community College for providing the web conferencing platform for this year's conference. Please note that captionings will be available for this conference session. We're going to go ahead and flip on over to slide 2. Our schedule for the next 3 days should be on the screen here in just a second. It can also be found on the conference website at ilco.net under resources and events, and that's ilcco.net. Go ahead and jump now to slide number 3. Links to attend the live sessions can be found on the conference website and your registration email. If you have any questions on accessing the recorded sessions, please be sure to contact Jeff Newell at jeffnewell@illinois.gov. Recordings of these presentations and handouts will be available at the conference website. Again, that's ilco.net following the conference. One last note, we ask everyone to stay muted when not speaking. There will be a Q&A period at the end of the presentation. Now, on to our introductions. Our presenters this afternoon are Nick Rohochek and Mark Lewicki from Morton College. Dr. Nick is the Academic Director of Online Learning at Morton, and he is also the Chair-elect for the Illinois Community Colleges Online Steering Committee, and Dr. Lewicki is the Director for Teaching and Learning at Morton College. I'll be dropping in a brief bio for them in the chat so you can learn a little bit more during the presentation. Thank you, Nick and Mark, for being with us today.
So our presentation today is Everything Everywhere. It's the unprecedented impact of AI on higher education. As Lisa mentioned, I'm Nick Rohochek, Academic Director of
Mark Lewicki.
Online Learning with Mark.
So those of you who've seen the movie would have caught the reference. But we spent a lot of money on these props.
But really, everything everywhere, I think that's a question that a lot of us are asking ourselves today. If we look at global spending on AI, it's set to reach about $110 billion by 2024. Gartner found that 48% of global CIOs are deploying AI, and 30% more plan to do so in the next 12 months. Accenture says that AI in healthcare could generate up to $150 billion in annual savings for the U.S. healthcare economy by 2026. And Adobe recognized that about 15% of organizations in the e-commerce sector were already using AI in 2021. You may have noticed there was a recent Amazon commercial that talked about AI getting integrated into their search feature. Let's look at it from an education perspective a little bit. Global ed tech expenditures are going to reach about $342 billion by 2025. This is largely driven by AI. And we have UNESCO kind of researching this topic pretty heavily as well. They had a report that came out that said that AI can facilitate virtual learning environments.
So we have a couple of quotes for you guys today. First one comes from someone who's the Director of Pedagogy at Wharton Interactive, just sort of towards this notion of AI being everywhere all at once. AI is everywhere. She says, everyone has access to the most powerful AI model in the world. Students are using it in all kinds of ways, including to cheat. And we can't tell if they're doing so, more or less. AI is our first general purpose technology since the internet, and it touches everything we do. It transforms how we live, how we work, how we teach.
And probably my favorite quote is, artificial intelligence is the new electricity.
So we're going to stop or step back a little bit right at the beginning here and do a quick history lesson, just kind of to ask the question, where are we and how did we get here? And we have kind of looked at the last century and identified what we think are kind of 3 or 3.5 turning points in education, at least looking within the United States. The past century has seen transformative moments in teaching and learning, but the 3 most important ones, I would say, first of all, is the emergence of compulsory primary education, and this didn't happen all at once. It started in the 1800s in fairly limited places, but by the turn of the century and shortly thereafter, sort of universal compulsory education for children was the norm. And it was, for the first time in human history, well, going back to ancient times, I don't know, there were, again, cases, but really for the first time, this idea that all children should go to school, that all children were worthy and educable, it was kind of a massive transformation. Another one would be on the higher ed side, which would be the massive expansion of higher ed after World War II. And this was truly, a massive expansion. You can see that little graph there from, before World War II up until, the 80s, 90s. And this, of course, was largely what fed the boom in community colleges, and here we are, right? And then number 3, I would say, is, I'm not sure Nick agrees entirely with this, but that there's this sort of great tech transformation that I would say is a fairly recent thing that that would have started, obviously it started way before this, but goes into the present.
And then there's the 0.5.
0.5, yeah, 0.5 is AI, although 0.5 might be number 4. We're not clear yet. Somebody has their hand up. What?
Jill.
Hi. Does someone have a question or?
See, again, we would ask that all questions are saved for the Q&A at the very end.
Okay. I saw a hand up there. Okay. All right. So continuing along, let's see here. So unlike the previous 2 transformations, the current one is mainly linked or tied to technology. And then the question comes up, well, is this really something so new and different? There was obviously a lot of hype with earlier technological developments, radio, television, computers. In every case, people thought, oh, this is going to change everything that we do and it's going to transform education. And replace teachers and so on. And, it didn't happen. Thomas Edison said, I believe the motion picture is destined to revolutionize our educational system. I don't know who it was, but somebody else said more or less the same thing about radio. But again, it didn't happen. That is to say, these things were in fact early stages of the tech transformation, of what's only recently come together in a way that's really transformative in education, which is to say the connected technologies that allow various kinds of audio and visual interactivity across space and time have finally taken their place as a core part of teaching and learning. So even if we go back only to the dawn of desktop computing, it was about 35-40 year march to this thing really coming together.
And why did it take so long?
Why did it take so long indeed? Well, tech can change fast, and it always does, but people don't change that fast. And we've always seen that it takes a lot longer for society and for people to sort of catch up, especially with something that is really complex and it involves a lot of moving pieces like educational technology. I'm going to go back, jump back to that sort of 1985 starting point or early 80s. I remember actually programming in BASIC, doing this is not my my program, that's long lost, but doing things like this would have been some sort of a language learning module, and you can see it's very rudimentary. It looked a lot like this even to the end user. Soon thereafter we had the internet, and the internet, when it first came out, looked kind of similar. It was really sort of for hobbyists. There was a pretty steep learning curve to know how to use it. You had to tie up your home phone to make it work. It was built on this military and government net, ARPANET and MILNET. And how did we know how to get around the internet in those early days? Well, you bought a book, and you didn't buy it at the online. You bought it at the bookstore, and that had all the internet addresses that you needed. Then, and you can tell on the cover of this book, it's this thing emerged, which was a way to sort of organize the internet and make it a little bit more user-friendly, called the World Wide Web. And the way that people managed that was using browsers. This is the first browser, Mosaic, in 1993. I remember it. Maybe not many of you guys do. And then this one, Netscape with Alta Vista, one of the early search engines, precursor of Google. So the question then is, when did remote and online learning become possible with all of this? Well, I took an online class, my first online class, in 1995, more or less, with the University of Arizona. And the biggest takeaway I got from that, and the class was about how to teach online. The biggest takeaway I got from that was that it's not possible to teach online. It was essentially a glorified correspondence course. I do think that in that time and in the ensuing decade or two, it was possible for people who were really invested, for people who had a lot of expertise, both on the side of teachers and students. It took a great deal of effort to make it happen, and it really wasn't for the uninitiated. So the bigger question is, when did it become really practicable in a general sense? Because that's the only way that it's going to become transformative, right? By the way, jumping back, the internet at that time, back in the 80s, let's just say 80s, early 90s, wasn't the only tech that was being auditioned for the role of game changer in remote learning. I worked at a rural college in Arizona at that time that was in covered a lot of territories, a county the size of Vermont. And they bought a satellite system, very expensive. It was $1 million or a couple $1 million, so that we could link campuses. What did all of this money get us? Well, it got us the ability to link like a professor in one place with some students in another place. Massive waste of money. We could have, rented buses and carried people back and forth for 20 years for what that thing cost. We could have put them up in hotels and so on. So, and the fact was that within a very few years, that technology was, completely obsolete. By the way, I just put that arrow there at the bottom. Kind of funny that we've never gotten away from that in all of our advances with technology. We still have the knot of cable under the desk. Okay. Anyway, the winner here is, of course, the internet, web browsers, but the World Wide Web. But web browsers and search engines, etc., these were not enough. Okay, you couldn't teach that way. You needed a whole lot more stuff. And that's what took really kind of a long time coming. We needed ways to communicate interactively. We needed platforms to host and to manage learning systems and assignments and things. We needed ways to create audiovisual materials and share those. We needed ways to to ensure security, etc. We needed ways to make it all more fun, and so on. Okay. So once again, tech can change fast. People, not so much, unless what happened in 2020.
Yeah, pandemic.
Yeah. So in 2020, the world got a big kick in the keister. And whereas all this stuff before 2020 was just out there and some people could use it and some people didn't, and a lot of people just said, no, I'm not interested. A whole lot of people did. In 2020, it became not an option anymore. In 2020, the number of students enrolled in at least one online course increased 97% over the previous year. 44% were enrolled exclusively online. 186% higher than the year before. So that's what I would say was really sort of the real turning point in the great tech transformation, when networked educational technology achieved critical mass. Both teachers and learners achieved a level of tech proficiency, which meant that they could now make more informed decisions on using tech rather than decisions based on, fear or discomfort or things I don't know. Everyone had sort of a base level of not everybody, obviously, but the great majority of people, teachers and students, had a base level knowledge and understanding of how to use this stuff. Students, especially now, have very different expectations regarding the role of technology, even in face-to-face classes. Students now kind of expect things to be on the learning management system. I don't know about everybody else, but even teaching face-to-face, and they need to be able to access it through their devices, their phone. I know even a face-to-face class involves almost as much stuff posted on the learning management system as a fully online class, which means, that ultimately the line between remote or online learning and offline or in-person learning is kind of getting blurred. It's not as clear as it once was.
Yeah, it becomes less about technology, more about pedagogy. So I think we could say the future's here. We heard Nicholas say that this morning in his presentation. Post-secondary student enrollment has seen yearly declines of 1% to 2%, while the number of students taking online courses continues to grow. All Ivy League schools have adopted online education. There was a time where we felt that online was relegated to other schools, community colleges, things like that. Going back even to the correspondence courses, for example, that Mark was talking about, but it's been embraced across the board at every level of institution globally. And online learning is an important tool, right, to helping close the widening global skills gap. And I think as administrative leaders, our bottom lines require us to meet this moment and to confidently and proactively communicate the ROI to students. And to do that, quality is essential. We'll get undercut by competition. There's going to be too much out there. So the future of online learning is really rooted in reputation.
Yeah, and again, pedagogy is first. You've got to be presenting a good product. You can have all the tech in the world, but if you don't have sound foundations behind it, you don't have a good product.
So yes, the future is absolutely here. Everything came together in 2020, 2021. We had this great tech transformation. It's complete. We're excited. And then
November 2022.
And so lots of different fun you can have.
So let's talk a little bit about AI. That's why we're here. Many of the times when I give presentations on AI, I like to go back to chess. For those that are into the technology or just into chess, you probably heard of AlphaZero. AlphaZero, product of DeepMind, which used self-taught strategies via continuous self-play. It beat older chess engines like Stockfish, which was traditionally the most powerful. And that relied on extensive human knowledge. As you could see from, I think this was from The Guardian, AlphaZero beats champion chess program after teaching itself in 4 hours. Given no human inputs, just learning from itself, it was able to defeat a program that had all of those inputs. So it really underscores the capacity of these AI systems to learn complex tasks autonomously. And the event, I think, serves as a turning point in AI research, influencing the development of more adaptable and self-learning algorithms, including those that we see now in these large language learning models, kind of most notably ChatGPT. A quick quote from Gary Kasparov, and that'll be it for my chess talk, but I always throw it in for all the AI presentations that we give, because I think it's just a turning point and quite important what DeepMind was doing. But yeah, chess has been used as a Rosetta Stone of both human and machine cognition for over a century. A reason that it's important gets into what we call multimodal AI. You may have not heard, many of you have perhaps, of the program Gemini. So this was launched December 6, 2023 by Google DeepMind. Again, same guys behind AlphaZero that developed that incredible program. Gemini has actually outperformed GPT-4, which is kind of the most ubiquitous, which we think is the best, Claude 2, Inflection 2, Grok, and others. So I think we could say that Google, Gemini, and OpenAI are today in what I would call an arms race. And probably I would say that it's a make or break moment for Google. And although we're not hearing that much from them, as much as we are from OpenAI, as an example, it is notable that Gemini Ultra achieved a score of 90% on an MMLU test. For those that don't know, MMLU evaluates performance of language models in comprehending and understanding language across multiple tasks in 57 different subjects simultaneously. So they've already built something that's more powerful than all the others. So it's going to be interesting to see how this develops and gets folded into education and other areas. With those multimodal AI capabilities, so in 2022, ChatGPT takes in text prompt, right, and it outputs a text response. It's probably the way that most of us use it. Most of your students are using it. But we have newer models that will input text and then output an image. We had DALL-E, right? DALL-E's been integrated into Bing through Microsoft's Image Creator as an example, and there's others. You can input text and output a video. You could put in your own voice data, output other voice data. Again, that's kind of a scary thing if you think about it. You can input sound, music parameters, and that song will pop out. And if you were at the presentation this morning, you could see that that learning management system that Nico was highlighting has become a bit more multimodal, where you're able to put in your learning outcomes, a syllabus, other materials to produce a particular output.
And you have a prediction that this year a song will win an award that was.
Yeah, I think for sure. Probably the Grammys just happened. If you guys watched
so
the
next
Grammys.
year's Grammys, an AI produced song is going to win.
I predict next year's Grammys an AI song will win best song. So just stay tuned for that one. But it also has limitations and challenges. Some of the external challenges would be lawsuits, legislation, capacity of society to adapt.
Yeah, that one, tech changes fast, but people not so much. So see. Well, another one here is energy requirement. And this is something more to do with, when these fears that AI will, get super huge and take over the world, which we will talk about more in a minute. But if that's going to happen, you've heard all about how blockchain or how Bitcoin requires so much immense amounts of energy. Well, some people have done the math on this, and they say, well, for AI to get that big will require insane amounts of energy. So where it's going to come from, we don't know.
And of course, we have internal limitations and challenges. There's still a lot of secrecy surrounding this. There's a limit on understanding of what is happening inside the machine.
It's interesting because, OpenAI is called OpenAI, and they are not open. They're not letting people see what's going on.
And a lot of people don't know probably that Elon Musk, who has his own Grok now through X, was one of the early guys on OpenAI, and he left OpenAI quite early. because of fears of what they were doing. We have limits on training data. We have the quality of that training data. We have hallucinations, which we heard about.
Which, and again, according to what Nico said this morning, it's kind of funny because, most of us think the hallucinations, this, just randomly bad answers for things and wrong information, that this is a problem that needs to be solved. And he said, well, it's kind of a feature, not a bug. And he was actually quoting, what's his name? The OpenAI guy, what's his name?
Yeah, Sam Altman.
Sam Altman, quoting Sam Altman on that. So,
we could take it a step further.
this whole thing. Yeah. I mean, so this whole idea that we have this quality of training data problems and hallucinations gets to what Cory Doctorow, who has been writing and talking a lot about AI recently. He has termed, and this has been quoted quite a bit, if you'll excuse the language, the enshittification of the internet and of AI and so on, that AI is constantly going back and, training on data that it can find, and first of all, there's limits to the amount of data that actually exists in the world and is available digitally. But as AI produced material, including hallucinations and wrong, inaccurate stuff, becomes more and more larger and larger percentage of the data that's out there, then basically it's training itself on bad data. And as we know, AI can't detect AI, so it doesn't know that it's training itself on its own bad data. So according to some people, this will lead sort of inexorably to gradually worse and worse outcomes. Okay, there's a paper that was just recently published here, a couple of people from Stanford and UC Berkeley, and it's exactly what they found was that the GPT-4, the current top form of GPT, of that generative AI, that from one day to the next or 1 month to the next was giving very different results in certain kinds of tests. That from March to June, the success rate on certain tests went from 84% to 51%, which is a pretty significant drop. And mistakes in code generation increased between June and March. So, the question is why? Why is that happening? Because OpenAI is not very open about what goes on behind the scenes. We don't know. Is it sort of some sort of intentional, breaks or limits that they're putting, or guide rails or something, or is just general data decay happening? So it's not really known.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come down to high quality data with who wins out. So the race is really on for that high quality data. We could think back, I would say, to Google in the 90s. It's funny, if you talk to our students today, or even some of our instructors, and you ask them, why is Google today? How did that happen? Maybe a lot of them don't know that it was, the founders that developed this innovative algorithm, which was known as PageRank. PageRank analyzed the link structure of the web, not only the quantity of links, but also their quality and their relevance, which really allowed Google to deliver more accurate and relevant search results. So it's really a better user experience. So I think whoever has the better data and can produce the most accurate output is going to win out on this race. But there is still, I would say, a lot of uncertainty as to how this works. There's a whole subfield of that. That's what we'd call the field of interpretability.
My favorite.
It's a subfield of AI, and it's trying to understand what is actually happening inside the model. So researchers can't exactly explain why the model said what it said. There's a high level understanding of what's happening, but you get a different answer each time. And I think many of you have probably tested it out. Just today, I was having lunch. I got a message from my local bookstore that a hardcover book that I ordered had come in. It's Charlie Munger's book, Poor Charlie's Almanac. And I thought, I'm having lunch, I'm going to ask it a question about Charlie Munger. And I asked it a just basic question. I said, what was Charlie Munger's favorite lunch? The first one, first answer came out as In-N-Out Burger and talked about his late ties to California. And then I asked it a second question, and it said his favorite lunch was undoubtedly a sandwich called the Whale Watcher from some local grocery store in Nebraska. So, I mean, within seconds of each other, completely different outputs, the same exact input. We have some idea of what's going on, but what's actually happening kind of inside that box, we're not totally sure what's happening.
Yeah, to me, and I think you give them more credit than they deserve about this, a high level of understanding. I mean, from what my understanding is, that we're really at a point where no one person really knows what's going on, how the machine is coming up with what it is, what it's coming up with. So, this whole field of interpretability, to me, it sort of brings to mind, this people sort of looking at this, we're looking at the outputs, of course, and trying to figure out how the machine came up with those outputs. So to me, it's sort of like oracles trying to divine the will of the gods, the diviner of interpretability or something. And in fact, the whole business of getting information out of something like ChatGPT really relies on how to ask questions and what questions you ask. And so, the difference between how well I can get information versus Nick or somebody else is, who is the best oracle, who knows how to, or who is the best person to question the oracle, who can ask the best question. And, there's all sorts of stuff like this online where it's kind of advice for how to formulate your questions for the oracle so that the oracle will be able to give you the best possible answers. And this is a very small part of this whole cheat sheet, is about a third of it. And so, you can see that it's just becoming sort of a sub industry of its own, is this whole question of writing prompts. Looking farther ahead, this is sort of the much bigger picture, stepping back, looking into the future, or purely conjecture about the future here. We have a thing called general intelligence and artificial superintelligence, not the same thing. General intelligence just means that the AI is able to think on its own and make its own decisions about things without human inputs. And then artificial superintelligence is far beyond anything that humans can do. This point at which the theoretical point at which that is reached is known as the singularity, which, 5 years ago, even maybe a couple years ago, this was a term that only sci-fi nerds knew about. And I think now a lot of people have heard about it. Singularity is the point at which machine intelligence surpasses human intelligence. And the big question is, what happens at that point? If you remember the movie, I always get it wrong. Her, the movie with Joaquin Phoenix, and he's got the AI voice in his head, Scarlett Johansson, and they're talking. I think he falls in love with her and all this. And the very end of the movie, she tells him, "Well, I can't talk to you anymore because," and he's very hurt, of course. And she says, "Well, we've learned everything we can from talking from humans, so bye." To me, that would have been the great place to start the movie, because what happens then? What happens at that point? That's the singularity, when AI decides it doesn't need us anymore. The big question is, at that point, is it aligned or unaligned? In other words, are the goals and objectives of the AI aligned with those of humans or not? If they're aligned with us, then yes, we can have transhumans, or we can have all sorts of fun. The AI will do all the work, and we can just lounge around eating dates and things. If it's unaligned, then if it has goals that do not align with ours, then that is when people think, well, that could be an existential threat to actual human existence. So will it happen? That depends on who you ask. A lot of people, and we're talking about people who are knowledgeable in this. A lot of people say it's possible. A lot of people say it's not possible. A lot of people say it'll happen within a year or 2 years or 5 years. A lot of people say, yeah, maybe 20. So again, it's not really known. Is this a legitimate risk to think about, that it might happen? Well, and if so, can it be regulated? Can we do something to make sure that we're at least somehow in control of it? These are good questions. Here's another really recent article, and it's talking about something they're calling frontier AI models, which are sort of risky ways of using AI. These pose a distinct regulatory challenge. Dangerous capabilities can arise unexpectedly. It is difficult to robustly prevent a deployed model from being misused, and it's difficult to stop a model's capabilities from proliferating broadly. So, in other words, evil weapon that gets in the wrong hands, who knows what they'll do with it. What do they mean by frontier models? Here are some examples. Things that would, for example, allow a non-expert to design and synthesize new biological or chemical weapons. And by the way, somebody about 3 or 4 months ago published a paper in which they did exactly that. And the paper was published with a caveat saying, you know, don't you do this now. Seriously, literally. And they came up with, recipes for new, previously unknown chemical weapons. Producing and propagating highly persuasive, individually tailored, multimodal disinformation with minimal user instruction, just, whole campaigns of complete disinformation, which may or may not have, as it says, users behind it. It might just decide to do it by itself. Harnessing unprecedented offensive cyber capabilities that could cause catastrophic harm. Once again, with some sort of evil force behind it, or not, because the last one is possibly the scariest one, that it could be evading human control through means of deception and obfuscation. In other words, the machine is off on its own. So what kind of wild-eyed lunatics would engage in such irresponsible fear-mongering, you ask? Well, turns out it's people from Brookings Institution, University of Virginia, OpenAI, Cambridge University, Harvard University, University of UCLA, and so on, Microsoft. These are risks that are worth considering.
So it makes the role of government here really important. The good news is that governments are taking it seriously. The US government established a National AI Research Resource Task Force to coordinate federal efforts in AI research and development. The Biden administration has emphasized international collaboration on AI safety standards and norm to address global challenges, though I think we're a bit behind Europe still. And they're not building their own, at least that we know about it, which, it begs the question, how can they really understand it completely without building their own?
I think they're in the basement blindly, or NSA or something working on it.
And then, of course, other countries, especially in Europe and Asia, are working on policies and regulatory frameworks.
Okay, here's another quote from my favorite commentator on this, Cory Doctorow, which apropos of not much, but this question that Nico raised this morning, is AI coming for our jobs? And this, I think, is an interesting take on it. We're nowhere near the point where an AI can do your job, but we're well past the point where your boss can be suckered into firing you and replacing you with a bot that fails at doing your job. So, once again, it depends on how people react to things.
Well, yeah, I mean, on to AI in higher ed.
Yeah, so far we've been doing sort of the bigger picture, and now from here to the end here, we just have some slides really more specific about AI in higher education.
So what can Gen AI do? What can explain a topic? I'm sorry, I got to go back. Apologies. Yeah, explain a topic. According to an audience, it can generate, organize, and categorize ideas, create outlines for essays, lectures, courses, write an essay on any prompt, compose or answer questions based on text, summarize or paraphrase a text. This is what we're seeing a lot of. Create images, music, videos from prompts, review scholarly literature, and integrate and cite sources. Which is,
in short, I mean, what it can do is an awful lot of what we do, what both teachers and students do in any educational setting. It's, that's an awful lot of what we do. So, the question is, well, if it can do all that stuff, what can we do? And I guess that's the question we really need to answer.
Yeah, and can it improve our teaching and learning? According to EdSurge, about 63% of ed professionals believe that AI-driven learning analytics can improve student outcomes. AI can automate up to 30% of the administrative workload in education currently, which will free up a lot of valuable time for folks. AI has the potential to provide personalized learning experiences for students. And then the big question is, what will better inputs produce? Will better inputs produce some of these better outcomes that we're really looking for? And the question then becomes, well, who has the best inputs? Where are they coming from? Because currently we're just scraping the internet. And as Mark was saying, there's kind of a lot of bad stuff out there. But higher ed,
A lot of bad stuff and a lot of not useful stuff. Yeah.
and not useful stuff. But higher ed, I would say, probably is the best source of data due to rigorous academic standards and a peer review process. Educational institutions, I would say, traditionally adhere to data collection and analysis methodologies meant to ensure accuracy and reliability. And the scholarly nature of higher ed fosters a culture of transparency, scrutiny, and verification, contributing to the overall integrity of that data.
That said, usually in these kind of conversations, I have the role of the skeptical longtime faculty member, as opposed to the more optimistic view. So I'm taking that role here in this presentation as well. That said, higher ed and the whole academic research structure machine does produce some good stuff, obviously. And AI has the potential to undermine the whole thing. It can be used, and this is a quote from a professor of economics from George Mason. It says, except for cutting edge empiricists, AI will make research even more of a scam than it already is. Now, this guy obviously thinks it's pretty much a scam. I don't think most of us wouldn't go that far. Consider the ease with which the Sokal hoax or the grievance studies hoax were perpetrated. AI will be able to do the same on an industrial scale. So I do think that there is a risk that AI and the use of AI in somewhat less than ethical ways can cause problems with the quality of published research.
But I would say prohibition is not really an option.
All that said, prohibition is not an option.
The workplaces that our students are preparing for are, or in many cases, are already working in or embracing AI in many ways. So our students need to be prepared.
And especially in community college, so many of our students are already out in the workplace. And believe me, in the workplace, they're using AI. They have no qualms about it. If they can, something can be done more efficiently with AI, they're going to do it. So if they're out in their business or in, their workplace, and then they come here and we've got our heads in the sand, it doesn't look so good for us.
Yeah, I mean, if we reject it out of hand, I would say that we are the past.
Yeah.
The degree to which we might embrace or integrate or incorporate might vary a lot, depending on discipline, goals, depending on the particular faculty members or departments.
You'll always get that faculty member who just won't use any of it.
and when
there's still people that don't use email, so
but our students are using it. We know this. So the question then becomes, what are students doing with it?
So half, and this is a study that actually turned it in, funded last fall, not too long ago, a few months ago. Half of students claim to be regular users of generative AI, probably ChatGPT, that's what everyone's using. 12% identify as daily users, could be more now. 75% say that they will keep using it, even if the professors or institutions prohibit it. But what are they doing? Now, this is a really important point here. 75% say they will keep using it regardless. Well, that's a pretty high number who say that, I think that's a higher number than students who would just flat out say they're going to cheat. But, they clearly don't really see it in quite the same category. Question is, what are they doing with it? Well, they published in the same report this graphic here. There's a lot in there and it's really small, but you know, a couple of things that stand out to me. One of them, answering homework questions, 31% of the daily users say they're using that. You know, you might see that as cheating, right? I get questions and I'm just basically having to answer the questions. But is it cheating if the teacher used AI to create the questions? You know, and then we get to the point where it's just this merry-go-round of me making questions with AI and students answering the questions with AI. And, you know, seems sort of pointless at that point. But anyway, you can see a lot of the different things that students are using generative AI to do. There are some challenges.
Yeah, how to understand and engage with what I would say is this very complex and fast evolving technology. Another thing to be aware of is that these models are relatively easy to jailbreak. So there could be bad actors out there using it to enhance, you know, their nefarious works, which could be a threat to any systems and records. And another important point is that it's difficult in proving AI facilitated cheating. I know that we have AI detectors like Turnitin, for example. However, it's important to note that these are like a snowflake. They're of one. We can't cross-reference whether or not this was cheating like we could in the past, or if it was lifted from somewhere else, because it wasn't. It was created. It is a one of one. And in my opinion, if a student sat down and said that, no, I didn't use AI, regardless of what Turnitin would say, even if they said 90%, it would be impossible, I think, to win that argument in the end.
Yeah. And as Nico said, also this morning from, you know, again, he's speaking on behalf of Anthology of Blackboard here, which I think is the largest, most widely used learning management system. On behalf of them, he says, we don't think there's a future in AI detection. They have rolled out AI detection, it's there, but they don't think there's a future in it. Instead of detecting AI, we need to lean into more authentic assessment practices. And he talked about quite a bit about what that might entail.
And there are legal concerns. I think students should be advised of surveillance or AI-based monitoring. Their consent should be obtained where applicable. Accusing students of cheating based on AI-generated evidence may require a clear and transparent process. Students do have legal rights, and accusing them of cheating with AI should be done in accordance with these rights. AI detection algorithms also can exhibit bias. And for our community colleges, many of which have first-generation students, many of whom their English isn't their first language, this can become problematic because this can lead to unfair outcomes. And there are a lot of research articles being published about this currently. Here's just an example of one that GPT detectors are biased against non-native English writers.
And I haven't, we haven't looked really at the methodology too closely at this, but definitely it's on the face of it looks fairly troubling. A significantly higher rate of false identification as AI when the writer is a non-native speaker versus a native speaker. So we really have to be aware of that, especially, again, if we're working with populations that include a lot of non-native speakers. So how are faculty responding to all of this, you ask? Well, got some good news. We have, in the past, we've gone, we've made that sort of a big part of presentations that we've done. But, it turns out that in this very seminar here, or this very conference, we have 4 more presentations coming up led by faculty and others at several different actually institutions that will address that. So we're going to pass that to them to get into some of the details about this. So finally, we have a couple of slides here about the pessimistic and the optimistic predictions here. And of course, I grabbed the pessimist side because that's just me. And it's not fair because you actually wrote this one. He says your college will be sued. Maybe it will, somebody will be sued, and actually it's already happened. people getting sued, colleges getting sued for giving students bad grades because they can't prove that they used AI. But what is even more certain, I think it will be more common, you'll have students who graduate by using AI without having learned much of anything. Obviously, this is nothing new. For generations, students have been pretty good. Certain students have been, really focused on this idea of graduating without learning anything. This just gives them another tool to work with, a pretty good tool to work with. So, it's easy enough to just say, well, that's nothing new. What are you going to do? For me, one of the other things, we may become relegated to the role of prompt writers. Talked about that a minute ago, that, if all I'm doing is writing a prompt so that the AI will create questions for my class, and all my students are doing is, are writing prompts to answer the questions that the AI made for me, then all we're doing, we've just all turned into prompt writers, and that's all we're doing. That, I think, is a real danger. And another thing that brought this home to me, this risk of students graduating without doing anything, was that I had a couple of students who clearly were using AI in pretty unethical ways last semester, and they were either nursing, I think they were pre-nursing. There were some of the many students who said that they intended to go into nursing, and it got me to thinking, students who are going to be nurses, doctors, engineers, aerospace mechanics or whatever, we don't want it to be easier for them to get through school without learning anything. So yeah, there is kind of a danger of that. I kind of worry about, the first generation of doctors who will be operating on people having used AI to get through med school. So hopefully that won't be a big issue. Of course, the AI will be looking over the doctor's shoulder, so maybe they will make fewer mistakes. In fact, this is a photo of this airliner recently where the door flew off, and Nick's conjecture is that this guy probably got through his mechanics class by using AI. So anyway, yeah. Now, the optimist.
Yeah, I want to give some optimistic predictions, some of which you heard earlier. But I think it can help with creating more engaging and clear materials. This idea of creative ideation, kind of more effective brainstorming, I think is
which Nico talked about.
Yeah, it's pretty robust. I think that is very good. And I think it can lead to better engagement with our students in our courses. It can lead to significant time savings for teachers on many tasks. Again, I think teachers aren't going to be replaced, but it'll help save time with some of the clerical work and preparing courses, and allow instructors to really focus on the teaching and get back to what they love to do and why they got into higher education. And I think our students could feel that in the classroom. It's absolutely, I think, more inclusive and accessible. A lot of this stuff is happening automatically, which is terrific. And again, I think Nico, who's the former CEO of Frontier, that developed the tool Ally, just as an example. These are incredible tools that we should all be using.
Yeah, when I design or I put up an assignment on Blackboard now, it tells me, this either passes or doesn't pass the universal design standard. And it's really good. I don't feel bad about having AI looking over my shoulder that way. I think it's worthwhile.
And I do think that there's an opportunity for more personalized and customized learning going forward. If we think about some of the origins of online education, right, we wanted to be more flexible, more accommodating. I think we could take that to the next level with some more personalization and customization, thanks to these tools. And certainly, I think there's opportunities for earlier intervention and support for students. And another thing that's incredibly important for us at the community college level would be the ability to offer more lifelong learning opportunities and upskilling, and looking where some of these jobs are, how we can help folks kind of progress in their current careers, or if they want to come back to school to engage in AI in today's economy. I think offering those opportunities are a really big bonus, and I think an optimistic prediction. And then lastly, and again, really important, is the ability for enhanced data-driven decision-making. I think the data is incredibly important, and being able to understand that data and use that data to make these administrative decisions is really going to help us going forward.
Yeah, I think that, faculty, we're always asked to, we're doing assessment and we're supposed to be using assessment for decisions. Yeah, but most faculty don't have that kind of background. Some people do if they're in the sciences and math or statistics, things like that, but most of us don't. And the ability to have, first of all, data that may be, sort of automatically collected and then analyzed for us, which, to some degree is happening already with a platform like Blackboard, and maybe the other ones too. I'm not that familiar with them. For example, when I create a test or a quiz now, I have the opportunity, or I'm given, sort of this thing that says I can do an analysis, and it will tell me, do there seem to be certain items here that had a lot that were, the students got wrong more than others, and so on. And that way, it's sort of a process of norming or of making sure that my instruments or my assessments are valid and are, treating students equally. So that kind of data stuff, I think, obviously AI is really good at it, and it's something that can be really useful to us as educators. And that opens up our questions, comments, and complaints area. Notice we have a lot of chats here, which we haven't.
A 5-minute warning.
Yeah, we got the 5-minute warning 2 minutes ago.
But yeah, happy to take, I know we have about 3 minutes left. Happy to take a question or two.
So if anyone has a question, if you want to raise your hand real quickly, we can call on you. I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, I see a hand. All right.
Atticus Garrison.
Go ahead with your question.
So how do you guys personally deal with the kind of Schrodinger's cat essence of where modern generative AI is at? It's super versatile. You've gone over how it's going to be a huge leap. Technological capacity, it has all these benefits, but at the same time, a lot of the companies that are out there, it's very, I compare it to like cryptocurrency in the sense that the odds are 98% of these companies that are pitching things right now aren't going to exist in 10 years, but generative AI in some form is likely going to exist and change the way we do work. So how do you evaluate, obviously right now, OpenAI is a leader. Google's trying to catch up. Microsoft's trying to get in, all these companies are getting in. How do you evaluate what tools are okay to use versus ones that maybe are less than trustworthy, especially given whenever you interact with any of these, it goes into training the models further?
Probably every word that we're saying here right now is going into training the models further. I don't think we can escape that. Probably every email we write, every text we send, who knows? Yeah, I don't know what you say. I mean, for me, it is one of the big challenges is it's such unsteady ground right now. It's such a fast moving, evolving situation that, yeah, it's really hard to know. It's hard to know if what we're doing now is, going to sow the seeds of our destruction down the road. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have a good answer for that. Do you?
I could scale it back a little bit to say some of the stuff we've done at Morton College. I think we worked with our faculty. Mark was instrumental as the lead of our teaching and learning center. We sat down and worked with faculty to develop a policy, I think first and foremost, to take the temperature down a little bit, which we think has been helpful. And certainly that's going to need to get updated. But I think that faculty feedback is really important. Nico talked about it this morning, that instructors should be kind of involved and really are on the front line of what's happening here. In regards to some of the integration that we're allowing on our learning management system, we're releasing it piece by piece very slowly. I test every feature pretty thoroughly before I feel comfortable releasing it to the faculty, knowing that people have kind of different understandings and capabilities in working with some of that technology. But those are some, I would say, the small steps that we've taken. Beyond that, we continue to talk to our faculty and visiting groups. We had a group in from Mexico where we're trying to answer, Atticus, some of these bigger questions that are keeping us up at night, not only for higher education, but beyond.
And you're absolutely right in your comment here that, you know, it is completely, the space, as you say, is full of crypto level charlatans. You know, Cory Doctorow has an article that he wrote, or a piece that he wrote in his blog, which was called something like, you know, what kind of bubble is AI? And he talks a lot about comparing it to crypto and to Bitcoin and all of that, which, you know, there's still a lot of believers in that as well. And who knows how that will ultimately play out in the long run. But yeah, it's a very volatile situation. I do think it is a good idea to bring down the temperature, to not necessarily get too worried about sort of end of the world scenarios and so on. Although, you know,
and to give you just a quick story, the first talk that we gave on AI in higher ed was titled ChatGPT, the End of the World as We Know It. So even us as a team researching these questions, we've changed our tune and we've switched to kind of a more optimistic view, albeit a tempered one.
yeah.
Well,
Oh, that first thing that we did after, and it was in January 23, you know, we had faculty afterwards come to us like, what, you know, we need to have a meeting here. We need, you know, we need to figure out a way to change everything. And yeah, we are going to end up changing everything. As Nico was talking about this morning, we're going to have to really, really rethink the kinds of assessments that we do. I've been teaching English for years, you know, for decades. Is the standard essay even viable anymore? I don't know. You know, I would say very possibly it's on its way out. So, you know, how long is it going to take before we just stop teaching it? Again, humans move more slowly than the tech does. So we're going to have to see.
Awesome.
all right,
Thank
well,
you
I
guys.
would like to thank Nick and Mark so much for this presentation and so much food for thought. Thank you so much. And I would ask all of you to please express your appreciation in the chat or with a reaction for them here. I'm going to close this out with just a few brief reminders. We have a conference evaluation that will be sent out to everyone. So please be on the lookout for that. And then if you guys could, can you put that schedule back up for me? You have another slide. Tomorrow, our next session tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. is on integrated AI in writing curriculum, featuring Annie Humphrey from McKendree College. And we really are looking forward to all of you being with us then. If you have any questions or comments or are not sure how to access the presentation or how to get a colleague registered, again, please reach out to Jeff Newell at jeffnewell@illinois.gov. And lastly, these recordings and presentations, handouts, all of this good stuff will be available on the ilco.net website following the conference. Thanks everyone for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.